Welcome back to another episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast. I'm Mike Siciliano, principal of the high school. I'm joined today by our band director, Andrew Young. Andrew, thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah, well, really, thank you so much for being here at Santa Fe. It's your first year here as the band director. I have to say, whenever we put out an opening for a position like band director, there's so much to it because you are not only teaching kids music, but you're really building like a community, a home for kids. And in your case, you're one of the few teachers here that gets to teach a kid from 5th grade all the way until they graduate, which is pretty cool. So thank you, first of all. You're doing a phenomenal job. We're thrilled to have you here. We really just want to get to know you a little bit today and hear about your philosophy behind band. And I'm going to start a little bit with your background because you have maybe not a prototypical background,
Right. Yeah.
in that you had a whole career as a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you talk a little about that and then what made you ultimately choose music?
Yeah. So when I was thinking of colleges, I was thinking of going the medical route or the musical route. By then, I had decided I wouldn't be trying to do soccer professionally.
Okay.
And so,
Which was probably hard.
which it was a hard decision.
Yeah.
Involved a broken ankle
Ah.
and dabbled in rugby.
Yeah.
And
My decision not to be an athlete just involved a lack of talent. So the fact that you can blame it on an injury is already, that's good.
Yeah. But so I was thinking about one or the other, and then kind of decided to do maybe a little bit of both. Looked into nursing while still doing music with a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did you play at this point?
French horn.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I
So
should
that's
have
your
mentioned that earlier.
specialty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my main instrument. And so eventually I switched to biology, and I thought, I can still do something, to help people in that route. But then I ended up starting to do gigs professionally. So my senior year of college, started getting calls for some albums and some soundtracks and things like that. And so after graduating, just did music for a year, was teaching and gigging and was enjoying the freelancing life. Then had a car accident and ended up having some bills from that.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe I should use my biology degree. And so I got a job at a company called BioLegend. It's kind of a fun name.
Which is here in San Diego,
Here in
right?
San Diego. And at the time, it was a slightly smaller company. And then they grew into a bigger campus. I had some coworkers that became good friends with and still connect with to this day. But was always doing music and always had kind of that heart for that and was able to do both. So I would, go into work for 4 hours, and then I would go teach for a few hours, and then I would come back to work and, go to schools and teach privately and gig. But it was just a lot. It was a lot of hours.
It sounds so cool when you say that you were gigging, by the way. Like, I've never had a profession where I got to say something like that. But so you would literally, in the middle of your workday as a scientist, and maybe just a little context, what were you doing? Like, you weren't like, doing the marketing for the company.
Right.
Like, you were in the lab, right?
Yeah.
If I remember. Okay.
I definitely didn't have the art skills for marketing. But yeah, so I started on there as working in tissue culture, which is growing cells, hybridomas, which are like a combination of myeloma cancer cells and immune cells. So they're producing antibodies, and they're just very hardy, very kind of aggressive cell lines. So you can produce a lot of antibodies, and they're easy to grow. And so I worked in product development at that company, kind of working in, it was called the new clones team. So all of the new monoclonal or polyclonal antibodies that would come in, we would test those cell lines and see, like, are they viable? Are they contaminated? So it was a fun kind of problem-solving job there.
Yeah. Most of our listeners know I'm just going to pretend like I know what most of those words mean. So that's generally my MO in these situations. But, you were doing, like, deep science research, developing a product.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah, don't be humble.
Just,
that's not the point of this. So, but you would leave. You'd be in the lab for 4 hours, then you'd leave, and you would go teach music somewhere. Yep. And you were teaching at some schools.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What schools have you taught at prior to coming here?
Westview High School is kind of the most consistent one. That's in the Poway district.
Yeah.
And then also San Diego Unified. I did Muirlands Middle School, which is the feeder into La Jolla High School. There was Correa Middle School down in Point Loma. So kind of all over San Diego. You'd be in the Poway district doing some of those schools. You'd be in San Diego as far as Point Loma doing those. And so a lot of driving, but always worth it for the kids.
And then you found us through Mr. Bogatov, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know he had you on campus last year at several points working with our students. Was that your first introduction to Santa Fe?
Yes. Well, I had actually heard of Santa Fe once. So my fiance's auntie, their son, actually went to SFC.
Okay.
And he was about our age, so almost 30.
Yeah.
And so he graduated, a handful of years ago. But they had just mentioned like, oh yeah, he went to this school, Santa Fe Christian, and he played soccer there and all that. But that was kind of my only little knowledge of the school.
Do we get to know who he is?
Nathan Ching.
Okay. Name, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
So I had only heard of it. And then one day I just got a call from, this guy, Vlad.
Yeah.
And he was saying, I need help with some of the brass players, looking for kind of a brass specialist to come in and help, work with them and sort of do some individualized, attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that's how I ended up coming here a handful of times and coaching the brass students in the middle and high school.
Okay. And then, just for people who don't know, so we had a pretty legendary band director for 30 years in Dave Hall, who built our program, did an amazing job, really did an incredible job building it from nothing. He retired, and Mr. Bogatov for a year did both the choir and the band. And then last year brought you in, and we found you. So you're in your first year. Transitioning a little bit to what are you hoping for in the band? Let me start with, I would wager most, like many things, right? Like sports here, many of our kids play sports. Most of them won't go on to play professionally. Many of them won't go on to play in college. That's probably true for the people in your band too.
Right.
So what are you hoping for the average student who's in your band?
Yeah, so really for music in schools, a big part of the draw isn't necessarily you're going to become the next Kenny G or one of those instrumentalists that's just a touring artist. For most of them, it's learning the skills of how to work in an ensemble, how to listen, how to be heard and find your voice through an instrument. Sometimes band kids aren't the most charismatic or out there students on campus. And so
I'd like to point out, I didn't say that. I love all the band students. They're fantastic.
Well, yeah. And it's nothing against them, right? It's just differences in personality. And so sometimes playing an instrument can give them a voice that they wouldn't otherwise have or use to express themselves.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. And then also if you just think of the mental aspect, the mental, physical, mind-body connection, you've got a lot of, muscle memory that has to happen and parts of your body that aren't used for anything else, essentially. Tiny muscles in your lips that, you only use to, produce an embouchure or make certain sounds on your instrument. And so there are things like that they have to learn, but then also they're learning another language. I mean, music is kind of a universal language where you could be on a stage with someone that only speaks German or only speaks Japanese or only speaks Spanish, and you can all read the same sheet of music and produce a sound that works with each other.
I've actually never thought about it that way. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It really is the same everywhere you go. So what about from a faith standpoint? Obviously, that's a big part of what we do here. How do you tie what you're teaching kids with music to their faith?
Definitely. I mean, you can think of verses where it's like, the trumpets will sound or, lift every voice and sing. And really like the glorifying God aspect should always be there in what we do. But we can definitely find connections in that throughout history of the arts have often been or were originally in some cases sponsored by religion and Christianity, and a lot of the greats that we think of and still play today. I mean, Handel's Messiah is still one of the top kind of Christmas time songs and activities for people to do to this day and sing along with, and all of that's glorifying, God.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Did you grow up a believer in the church, or is that something that came to you later in
I
life?
did. We, grew up did Awana and Cubbies and, and all those things. But it was one of those things where, once we got more involved with sports and my sister and I, she'd be doing travel softball, I'd be doing soccer, and we just had our mom. And so, we'd be going from place to place. And so sometimes we wouldn't have time to go, to church on a Sunday. And so it became more about kind of the personal growth, and joined like a small club kind of secretly at school, where there, was a very willing teacher who was, a man of God. And we would go into his room at, lunchtime once a week and pray for each other, pray for the school, for the community, and then just talk about issues that, either we were having.
But it really was kind of underground.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because teacher obviously at public school wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so it was interesting how, we weren't walking around saying like, "Hey, I'm a Christian," at this school. But, he kind of knew, and he found us, and we found each other. And I mean, some of us knew each other, and already knew that about each other. And it wasn't a hostile environment at that school by any means. But it just wasn't something that you could do in a legal sense, I guess, have a club for that.
I mean, what an impact for that particular teacher. I mean, I'm always struck by how one teacher can make a difference for so many. I mean, how many kids over the years found that little group?
Right.
So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
How has that impacted, I mean, obviously you're a band teacher, but as we say here, our content is always just a vehicle for mentorship.
Definitely.
How are you finding you're able to use your position in a mentorship way?
Definitely just making kids feel heard, make them feel as understood as I, hopefully can. And really just wanting them to know that they matter, and what they want in life and their goals matter. And music can be a good way to help them achieve those goals. For some people, it's a great stress relief. If they've been having a rough day or just a rough time of life, they can come in and it just uses a different part of you, where, you can produce joyous sounds even when you're feeling the most broken. And so I want kids to be able to come in and feel that they have a safe space to just be, to exist. They can, you go to the bathroom if you need to cry, that's okay. And just know that you have one person on campus, which obviously at this campus we have many, but you at least have one person on the campus that you can always come to and say, I'm really struggling with, this, or I'm struggling with math, or, whatever the case is, that they have someone there for them. And that an expressive art is kind of a way that you can sometimes get those connections and those emotions out of people.
Yeah. I love that. So let's say I was joining the band, okay, which I would apologize for. I did actually play the trumpet for 2 years in the band, back with Dave. Do you know why I picked the trumpet?
No.
I assumed since there was only 3 buttons, it would be the easiest instrument to learn. True story. I was wrong about that. So that was a hard lesson, and I wasn't very good. So I only lasted 2 years. But nonetheless, students coming into the band, what kinds of experiences would they be expected to have over the course of their, could be 7 years, 8 years with you? Where do you guys perform? What kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, so a lot of that I'm still learning myself. Every new thing that we have, our Veterans Day performances down, with the community over at La Colonia Park, and then the event we have on campus, inviting people on to hear and see and listen to a message from a speaker. I mean, all of that was kind of new to me this year. At other schools, you tend to, you have your concerts, which are generally on campus, and then you maybe do some parades, maybe do some marching band, and that tends to be the extent of it. Festivals, things like that. And so it's been interesting where my first 2 experiences here were not band concerts,
right?
And so it's it's an atypical experience in a good way, where you're getting to interface with the community. You're really representing the school in kind of a unique way.
Yeah, I mean, the Veterans Day that we do here in particular, I mean, my favorite part of that is the band plays the military anthems for each branch, and the veterans stand up and get an applause. And I mean, it's pretty neat.
It is
to see. I mean, it means so much to those people. So that's a pretty big one. Yeah. And then you mentioned La Colonial festivals. I think typically we usually go somewhere, right? I think, are we doing Disneyland this year? Or are we
working on it? Yeah, working on.
Sorry, I'm not trying to break news here.
And so I'm actually kind of just in the process of feeling out. Do we want to do sort of big trip like Disneyland that some of the kids have done before, and it's something they definitely look forward to. They've been asking all year, are we going to Disneyland? Or do I kind of provide them different experiences and maybe do a cycle of, this year we're kind of going to do this, and you're going to go here, and you're going to, work with this community, and we're going to play for them and that. Or, this year we're going to go do something and record at this college, or you're going to have a clinic with, a professor, and they're going to get up there and sort of tell you guys, hey, this is what we need to improve on as an ensemble, maybe less individual, and just think of things where sometimes hearing it from another adult can make a difference versus, your band director that that tells you to sit up.
It's like your parents,
breathe.
right? Your parents can say something, but then someone else says it and suddenly it sounds amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I know some years in the past, and I'm sure you have appetite for this, but the band has gone to places like Australia or Italy. I mean, is there hope that one day that could happen again?
I mean, I certainly hope that it, even from a selfish standpoint, but yeah, having those international or even, intra-national, if we were to go to another state, do a band tour or something, play at churches and schools, just having that opportunity for them to meet other people, work in other cultures, find differences in our lives, and then kind of connect through music. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for students. Yeah. So, yeah.
Practical question, just for someone who may not know how it works here. So you can start band here in 5th grade.
Right.
Okay. So what does that look like? We have a 5th grade band, right? And that meets, when do they meet?
They meet, currently they meet twice a week, from 7:30 to 8 a.m. So it's an hour total a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah. So right before school, and the joining process it's just very fluid, honestly. We started out with about 10, and we are currently at 14.
Okay.
And as of yesterday, we might have another member joining in the spring.
I mean, you're building something cool now. Everyone wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, their friends are doing it, and that's such a fun kind of underappreciated, I guess, aspect of band sometimes is the social element, where these kids, they become friends with the people that are playing their instrument. They bond, doing this thing together.
Yeah.
And so that gives them just another space where they can say like, oh yeah, I'm in band. This person's also in band. You should join band.
Yeah.
And that's really, at least early on, that's how it goes.
Yeah. And then once you get to 6th grade, you can sign up for the band class.
Right.
That meets 3 times a week. And we have right now basically a middle school band and a high school band.
Correct.
Possible some years, depending on numbers, we have sort of an intermediate band in the middle there that is some of both.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you are a really outstanding musician who wants to go on and play in college, I think about Kevin Sharonsari, who we've had on this podcast before, who graduated a couple years ago, is at the University of Texas directing band, doing incredible things. But what kind of opportunities would we have for somebody like that?
Yeah, there are definitely. So one of the plans, and for some of the families this might be news, but one of the plans that I have for the spring is somewhere toward the end of the year, I would like to do an honors recital, where the kids that are in the honors band class, because there's a concert band. So in the high school, it's all one ensemble, but there's a concert band class, and then there's an honors concert band class. And that's more for the students that really, are driven and want to not just like learn, scales and all that stuff, but want to like learn and get a little bit more deep into the music.
Yeah.
And so for them, I plan on having a recital where they can, play with each other, and also do solos, maybe with piano or unaccompanied. And that'll be an opportunity for them to really showcase what they do outside of school.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've talked about here, even academically, is about growing resiliency in students. How does that happen in band?
Yeah. So in band, it's kind of a unique experience where, you go your life, and if you're in an English class, well, you already know how to read and write, presumably.
Yeah.
And then in band, you get to something where sometimes in high school, it's your first time playing this instrument, and reading music. And so it's a pretty big learning curve when you're first starting. And so the kids that tend to succeed well in band are the ones who do have that sense of self-motivation, of perseverance. And sometimes that motivation is, I don't want to sound bad.
Yeah.
And that can be enough.
Mm-hmm.
It really can. But for some students, they realize that they want to sound good and produce something just more than their own little bubble.
Yeah.
They want to be part of something bigger. And it's those students that really start to shine, and you see whether they continue to do music at all, or whether they go on to be professionals. Students over the years will come back and say, I'm glad that I did this because it taught me how to do time management.
Yeah.
It taught me how to, listen to others, how to be patient, positive self-talk. Musicians are notorious for being, we're our own worst critic, and that's common for everyone. But for musicians, sometimes you start to put your identity and find yourself in your sound or in how accurate you are, or, if you make any mistakes. And for a lot of musicians, that's something that it's a lifetime struggle. But for the ones that tend to enjoy it and find just pleasure from it, and keep it as a hobby or something that they do, I think they can find a way to sort of say it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things I want to impress on students. It's all right to make a mistake. Was it perfect? No. Was that the best you played it? No. Did you, at the Christmas concert, was that your all-time highest quality performance of those songs? No. But did you get through it? Was it okay? Are you going to be okay?
Yeah.
And did it get the message across? And the answer almost always is yes.
Well, it's so important. There's a couple things I'm struck by in that answer. Number one is just maybe noting it's healthy for kids to have something they're not very good at. And I think by the time, in my world, kids get to high school, a lot of times they've already decided I'm good at something or I'm not.
Right.
And also they don't have a lot of necessarily sometimes new things. Hey, I've been a student and I'm in ninth grade. I've been a student already for 9 years. I know how to do this.
Right.
If I'm not good at a particular area, I'll just avoid it. And what you do, it sort of exposes that, right? And it's something they have to start from scratch. And if they want to be good at it, they're going to have to fight through that and demonstrate that resiliency.
Definitely.
Which is really pretty neat. Yeah. Just to clarify one point as far as the process, a student can join the band at any time, correct? They don't have to start as a fifth grader.
Right. They could join as a senior.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. And then secondly, hypothetically, yes, I may have a fourth grade daughter, but hypothetically,
right.
Let's say I'm a parent of a younger child and I'm interested in exposing them to the band, or are there things that I could do that would help them see the beauty in this, or even prepare them for potentially joining next year?
Absolutely. We have a really wonderful, talented, and just caring elementary music teacher, Anadara Arnold. Yeah. And she inspires those kids in so many ways. Kids love banging on buckets with drumsticks, and they love.
I can say they love practicing their recorder.
They love
home.
Practicing their recorder at home. Some experience you have there.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so there are ways here that the younger kids are exposed to those things early on, so that in many cases, they're excited once they learn, there's this thing called band. And part of what I've been trying to do is involve those kids and help the other students to kind of realize on campus we have this ensemble that represents us, and we'll be representing an increasingly large number of our students, and so those fifth graders they played in the Christmas concert. I think that was that ensemble's first time playing as part of the band and choir Christmas concert. And those kids some of them were scared. Some of them were excited, but had that, kind of nervous energy. And then once they played, I mean, they were just, over the moon. And their parents were very happy. And their friends, that's since then, 2 students have said, hey, is it too late to join band?
Right.
And it's like, you're a 5th grader. I mean, these kids just picked these instruments up a few months ago.
Right.
Of course you can join band.
Yeah.
And there's a student in 8th grade who's going to be in high school next year. And he asked, a few weeks ago, some of my friends are in band. Is it too late to join band as a freshman? I said, absolutely not. Of course you can join band. Right. So I sent him home with a slightly rusty trombone and set him up with, a good friend of mine that teaches lessons. And so I think he's gotten started on lessons, and he's looking forward to joining band as a freshman, having never played trombone next year. So
I also know a lot of our musical events includes the band and the choir. Obviously, you have a long relationship with Mr. Bogatov, or at least a pre-existing relationship. Right. So how do you guys work together?
Yeah. So when it comes to working together, a lot of it's just a matter of deciding, how do we want to combine for this piece. So Marches of the Armed Forces, for example, or Star Spangled Banner. Anytime you bring instruments in a band of learning musicians with a choir where, for the most part, we all grow up using our voice all the time, whether it's just vocalizing as a baby or vocalizing as an adult, anyone can kind of sing, depending on how well, but anyone could, produce those sounds and know how to speak and say words and timing and stuff. And so the choir kids are often like, yeah, we're ready. Day one, okay, give us that song. They just eat it up. And then for the band, it's, well, okay, we maybe know how the song goes, but maybe you're playing a harmony part that whenever you think of the Star Spangled Banner, you never hear in your head. You're just hearing the melody.
Right.
And so for a lot of kids, it takes some time for the piece to even feel like or be recognizable. Especially in the middle school, sometimes you'll give them something where yesterday they sight read, and sight reading is when you read something at sight. So it's the very first time you're seeing it. And so we were reading some music from Aladdin, and
Which
most
song?
of them,
Because that is my favorite Disney movie.
well, it was a medley. So it started with Arabian Nights, and then Friend Like Me was the next song.
Gotta have that one in there.
And a lot of them, once they're like, they start singing it, and then they go to play it, and and that's the middle school band experience. You go in and you think, I know this song. It's gonna be so easy. And then you go to play it, and it sounds nothing like this song.
Especially if you know the melody and you're playing harmony.
Exactly. And sometimes you'll have a kid say, I don't have the melody in this at all. Like this song is the worst. And over time they come to realize all of the voices in the ensemble are important. And so then that lends to an accompanying mindset because whenever we're doing a song with the choir, yes, the band part is very important, but it's really building a bed of sound that the words can be better conveyed through. And so, just like you wouldn't want to hear your favorite Taylor Swift song without the music happening in the background, the same can sometimes be said of, whether it is the Star Spangled Banner or the Marches of the Armed Forces. I mean, it's fun to have those words, dun, 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 dun. But if you don't have the fullness of the music as it was intended, then the two don't work together. Yeah. And same if we were to play it without words.
Yeah.
It's hard to know, what the caissons are doing if you don't have the words for it.
Yeah.
I
mean, how would we know they go rolling?
There's no way.
Yeah. What is getting away from just the band experience? You've now completed some time here at Santa Fe. What have you noticed about it? Maybe something that surprised you or that you appreciate about it?
Yeah, well, honestly, culture shock, right? It's you come on campus and it just feels different. And as you spend more time here, you kind of start to realize these people aren't just, smiling and saying, "Hi, Mr. Young," because they want to be, they want to look a certain way.
Yeah.
You realize it's because they're nice. They're just nice people, and good people, and you feel cared for here in a way that, sometimes you don't have that connection with, whether it's your coworkers or with students that aren't in your classes at other schools.
Right. Yeah.
You can just be on campus and people will greet you and ask how your day is going, and they'll stop, wherever they're walking to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's felt like a very genuine place. And it's just been a nice, place to be.
Well, you are doing nothing but adding to that culture. I think everyone has been thrilled with just the fact that we get to have you here. I know the kids love you. We're really excited to watch as the program continues to move forward and grow. So thanks for taking a little time today to be here and share a little bit.
Of course, yeah, and thank you for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure. And thank you for listening or watching. If this is your first Eagle Perspective podcast, we have lots of other episodes with staff, alumni, others in our community. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, elsewhere podcasts are available. You can watch our video podcasts on YouTube. Check us out. Look forward to seeing you again soon.